Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us on a Saturday evening for our last session of the Convention Leader Training. My name is Jessi Cowart, and my co-pilot for the evening is Mr. Joe Burns.
How's everybody doing?
Real quickly, I want to take a moment to acknowledge additional members of the Credentials Committee who contributed to all of the excellent research that went into the presentation that we're going to give to you today. The chair of the Credentials Committee for this convention cycle is Mr. Nathan Watts. Also contributing was Christy Ford, Doug Kroll, Bo Zimmerman, and Darren Pollock. And you can reach all of us at credentials@lptexas.org. High-level agenda for this evening is we'll just kind of go over a general timeline of the convention cycle. We'll talk about the convention notices. Those were due today for Precinct, so we'll touch really quickly on that. And then we're going to break it down by convention type. And then finally kind of go into where some of the resources are that will help you along the way and touch real briefly on Robert's rules as well. And we'll talk about some of those resources as we go as well. All right. So the convention process is broken down into geographic parts, right? So you start with your precinct, your county, your district, state, and national conventions. So what we're going to focus on tonight is everything that happens before state. So we'll be breaking it down by precinct, county, and district. So we'll talk about eligibility for participating in those conventions, where you can find all of the forms that need to be turned in and how you go about submitting them, and then really just kind of talk through how you generally lead a convention and select delegates. I do have to call out the disclaimer here at the bottom of the screen. We did scour the Texas election code to make sure that we have dotted all of our I's and crossed our T's, but it is prudent for us to mention that this is not legal advice. We have done our very, very best and put an extreme amount of diligence into this, but if you do have any questions or want to kind of seek official advice on election laws, you can always contact the Texas Secretary of State Elections Division. All right. So these are our key dates. If you go onto the LPTexas website, there is a heading of 2022 conventions, and I'll show this to you here in a little bit. But that's going to basically bring you, from the time that candidates were supposed to have filed all the way up through national convention. What we've got here is just kind of cherry pick things that apply to us as a state party, right? So starting in February is where most of the magic started happening, right? So we had the last day to vote in time for the March conventions. That was February 7th. And then today, literally today, is the deadline for precinct convention notices. Assuming that county offices are closed today, being a weekend. I hope that everybody on the call got their precinct convention notices in yesterday. If you haven't, I encourage you to go on Monday and try to pull the deadline was on a weekend card and get those convention notices turned in on Monday. Again, it was just the precinct convention notice that's due today, but we do encourage you to go ahead and post your county convention notices at the same time. That way it just saves you a trip. You can go ahead and knock out both of those notices in one trip. March is going to be the meat and potatoes of the convention season. So the first date that we call out here is the primary election. And I put it in red because it doesn't apply to us at all as the Libertarian Party. But it's important for everyone to know, you as leaders, as well as spreading the word to the members of your county party, that you cannot participate in the primaries and then also participate in the LPTexas election. If you have a person who votes in the March 1st primary or in the early voting that's happening right now, right, anytime, that nullifies their eligibility to participate in precinct conventions and every convention thereafter. So it's really important to emphasize to your folks, they cannot participate in the Republican or Democratic primaries and then also participate in the LPTexas conventions. Taking it on from March, we've got a deadline for county convention notices on March 2nd if you haven't already done that at the same time as you took care of Precinct. Precinct conventions are March 8th. That's a Tuesday. No wiggle room on those dates, guys. So that is mandated by Texas election code. So the precinct conventions do have to take place on March 8th. And then the deadline for the precinct convention records to be sent in, so your rosters, your minutes, etc., that's going to be on Friday the 11th. So you've got a good 3 days to get those records in after that precinct convention is completed. Precinct conventions in many cases. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. And then we jump right into county convention that following Saturday. So Saturday, March 12th is the county convention date. Again, no wiggle room there. That's mandated by TEC. Following Saturday, district conventions were applicable. And we'll talk a little bit more in a little bit about where applicable means and how you can find some information about that. And then the 22nd of March, that's going to be the deadline for county convention records to be sent. And that's going to be for records and for the credentialing of our state convention delegates. So that's a very important date. And then we get into March. So that's going to be the deadline for the county convention chairs to certify candidates that were nominated at county conventions. And then the 8th is going to be the deadline for the district convention chairs to certify candidates nominated at district conventions. And then that brings us right up into our state convention, which is going to be the weekend of April 8th through 10th, and that is in Irving, Texas. And I encourage you, if you have not bought your tickets yet or made your arrangements and accommodations, to definitely do that. And I'll make sure that I show you where to see where to find that information on the LPTexas site here in a little bit. All right. So convention notices, I'm going to kind of skim on this just because, again, the notice for precinct was technically due today. If you haven't already done that, please make sure that you take care of it. A couple of things on convention notices. You do have to make sure that those convention notices are posted on the county commissioner's bulletin board. This is something that happens once every 2 years. And I mention that because the folks in your county clerk's office may not be super savvy whenever you walk in there with your convention notices. They may have to go around and say, "Hey, how do I do this? What do I do?" It's not something that they do regularly, so they may fumble a little bit. I say that to encourage you to build in time. Like, this may not be something that you want to try to do on your lunch hour if you're trying to get back to work for a meeting, for example. You may want to plan for a little bit of time, just because the county clerk's office may not be quick to know exactly what it is they need to do, but they will eventually get you where you need to be, and we encourage you to make sure that those get posted on the county commissioner's bulletin board, and they should stamp it and certify it for you. Some counties charge you for that, some counties don't. I would encourage you to at least get copies of it. That way you have copies for your records if all else fails. There is a requirement that you do have to have those notices posted on a place on the internet that is searchable on the internet. And what we are recommending that you do, if you have a county website, you absolutely have to post those notices on your county website. So if you haven't posted your precinct notices on your county website, please do this really quickly and take care of that. But if you don't have a county website, that's cool. What we're also encouraging everyone to do is to post those notices on the LPTexas page. So if we go to the LPTexas website, and I'm just pulling over another page here to share with you. So here is our LPTexas website. What we are asking all of our county executive committees to do is, under resources and events calendar, if you haven't already, there's this link that says submit your own event for LPTexas events calendar. We want you to click here and
Jessi,
submit.
It's not on the screen currently.
Oh no, I'm so sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
That's all right. what we're asking you to do is go to lptexas.org. Sorry about that, guys. And then click on resources and then events calendar. And then there is going to be a link for you to submit a form, and you'll want to do that for your precinct conventions and your county conventions. So you'll need to do that not once but twice. Again, county due on March 2nd, but we're encouraging everybody to try to knock out those early on if you've already got those plans made.
Yeah. So once again, just to kind of reiterate what she's saying, lptexas.org is our main website. And when you're looking at the tabs at the top, you're going to want to go directly to resources. And under that drop down, the very first one is the events calendar. So once you're there, then it's easy to input the information you need to make sure that you've got those posted and have met the legal requirements for that.
Yes, sir. All right, so that's convention notices. I won't talk a whole lot more about that other than to say that also on the LPTexas website, you can find the forms themselves. So also on that page, if you go to the 2022 conventions heading, there's going to be a menu item called training and forms. So lptexas.org, 2022 conventions, and then training and forms. If you click on training and forms, what you'll see is there's an area called a convention forms, and then there will be a link for files. All of those forms that you will need for your conventions are there, including the convention notice blank templates, as well as some examples that you can reference whenever you're filling out your own templates. All right. So let's talk about the precinct convention here in a moment. I do want to pause real quickly though and just ask Joe, any questions coming from the group so far?
I have not seen anything yet, so looks
All
like
right.
we're good to go.
All right, sounds good. All right, let's jump right into precinct convention then. All right, so again, date of the precinct conventions are going to be Tuesday, March 8th. So those, the date is kind of up to you, what you choose. We do recommend kind of in the 7 to 9 time frame, just to allow people, to, get home from work or commute from work, etc. And those, of course, locations and times must be published no later or no less than 10 days before the date of the precinct convention, which is today. I do want to call out that whenever we're talking about precinct here, we're talking about voting precincts. We're not talking about like your county commissioner precinct or your constable precinct or anything like that. We're literally talking about your voting precinct. Oftentimes, and especially in small counties, a lot of counties will just have one kind of meeting place. So whenever you post your notices, maybe you say all of your, say all precincts. And basically what that means is that you're going to be having multiple precinct conventions, but they're all going to be taking place at the same location and time. And so let's say you've got, some folks that show up from precinct 1, some from precinct 2, and then there's only one person from precinct 3. That's okay. If that one person from precinct 3 shows up, they're automatically the convention chair, and they're basically going to have a one-man precinct convention. It is important to note that you do have to have paperwork filled out for each precinct, right? So even if you've got, multiple precincts that are meeting at the same, time and place to do the precinct conventions, you're going to have, your group over here that's precinct 1, group over here that's precinct 2. There's going to be multiple precincts going on in that same time and place if that's the way that you're doing it. And I think that based on what I've seen, most counties are doing it that way this go round. But you will have to fill out paperwork for each precinct. And that's something I want to make sure that we emphasize. And then, of course, that paperwork, once it is filled out, needs to be submitted no later than Friday, March 11th to records@lptexas.org. So that's just a high-level overview. So let's kind of talk about the eligibility. Again, may not have affiliated or participated in the primary of another party. So that's really important. They do need to be a qualified Texas voter, and then generally support the party statement of principles. There is a form in that forms area that I just mentioned, and it's called your roster for the precinct convention. It also includes an oath of affiliation in there, and there's some high-level verbiage in there that meets that need for kind of supporting the party statement of principles. What I'm showing on my screen here is just an example of a voter registration card, and what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to validate these voter registration cards. Number one, it needs to not be expired. So make sure that you're looking at the dates to make sure that they're not providing you with a expired voter registration card. That voting precinct that I mentioned is going to be right there on their voter registration card. And then whoever is kind of signing everyone in, be that county chair, whomever is going to stamp or write libertarian right here where it's talking about party affiliation. So let's talk about the actual process and the minutes whenever you're actually doing your precinct conventions. So again, you do have to hold a precinct convention with all the members that live in the same precinct. So again, you may have, multiple groups happening at the same time. And then you do need to do filling out the roster of participants. So everybody's legal name, your government name, if you will, as it appears on your voter registration card, your physical address, email, phone number for each participant in that precinct convention. Do want to emphasize again that we want to have things be legible, and we want all boxes filled in. So we want to have all of this information. I will say that the Credentials Committee was on the struggle bus with some of the paperwork last go round, just because there were some contact information that had not been filled out, and we needed to try to get in touch with people. And then sometimes even whenever we reached out to county chairs, they didn't know how to get in touch with people, because sometimes, people just kind of, show up for convention and then, they kind of ride off into the sunset for a little while. So please make sure that everything is very, very clear and that all boxes are filled out. And that roster of participants does need to be signed by the precinct convention chair. There is a precinct minutes where you'll talk about who was the convention chair. You actually go through the process of electing the precinct chair, and then it does need to be signed. And then the last form that I want to talk about is the additional delegates elected at precinct convention. And this is one of those things where if somebody wants to participate, but for some reason or another, they can't make it, this is a way that they could be nominated as a delegate to the county convention, even if they aren't physically present at the precinct convention. Here's the catch. They do have to be nominated by somebody who actually lives in their precinct. So I'll just kind of give you a hypothetical. Let's say I wake up on Tuesday, March 8th, and I'm running 104 fever. I can't make it to precinct convention. If I'm going to be a delegate to county convention, somebody who lives in my voting precinct will have to nominate me. And then that will need to be captured on this additional delegates elected at precinct convention form, so that I can then be a delegate to county, even though I wasn't physically present at the precinct convention. So my husband, if he went and he was feeling fine, he could nominate me. Obviously, we share a residence, we then therefore share a voting precinct, no problem. But my buddy Nathan Moxley, who is, in Montgomery County with me, he is not in the same voting precinct as me. So even though he knows that I'm good for it and I want to be a delegate to county convention, he could not nominate me to be a delegate to county via this process, because we don't live in the same voting precinct. So I wanted to make sure that I kind of went over that with you and make sure that there was clarity. Over on the right-hand side, I've given you kind of a high-level agenda of how this should flow. So first, you could do the roster of participants and the oath of affiliation. The temporary convention chair verifies participants, and that could be anybody, right? You can just, play paper, scissors, rocks on who's the temporary convention chair, and they call the convention to order. Then you go through the process of electing a convention chair. And again, this is one for each precinct, right? So if there's only one person reporting for that voting precinct, boom, guess what? You're the convention chair. And then you can elect precinct officers as needed. So we recommend at least a precinct chair. All participants are going to be automatically eligible to be delegates at county convention. So there's no set number of people or anything like that. There's not an election of delegates, if you will, that happens at the precinct convention. Anyone who comes to precinct convention is automatically a delegate to the county convention. You can go through the process if needed for that additional delegates that aren't present. And then, of course, if there's any other business, you can capture that, any resolutions or things like that. I know some at times, precincts will just make a resolution saying, hey, everybody who's participating is automatically a delegate to county convention or something like that. But any other business, and then basically just close the meeting. Each precinct convention chair is responsible for making sure that that roster is signed, all the precinct minutes and everything is signed, dotted. You've got to make sure that you've got the precinct number at the top of the form, and then making sure that they take a copy of it themselves. Generally speaking, what I see most common is that you've got these multiple precinct chairs, right? So everybody gets their paperwork together, make sure it all signed, and then at the end of the night, they'll turn them in to the county chair so that the county chair can scan everything and turn it into records, kind of all at the same time. And that's absolutely fine. That process works just fine. But the convention chairs, I encourage you to, with your smartphone, take it out, make copies of those forms, because Texas election code says that you, as the precinct convention chair, are responsible for making sure that information gets submitted to the county chair and to the state chair, in fact, via records. Within the deadline. So make sure that you, as the precinct convention chair, if you end up being one, make copies of it, even if you're handing that off to your county chair to actually submit into records, and then follow up with your county chair to make sure that they did that. So I'm going to pause before we jump into the county convention part. I want to just open it up for questions that we've got from the group. What questions do we have out there, Joe, around precinct convention?
Yeah, we did have a couple of questions. Jenny Moore here had asked, does the writing in of Libertarian on the voter registration card have to happen at the convention in an official capacity?
Yeah, so I mean, if you want to have them take like a verbal oath of affiliation, they can. But if you look at, and if you go to, again, that area, lptexas.org, the 22 conventions, and look at those convention forms, that roster and oath of affiliation form has the verbiage right up there, and the person does need to provide their signature. So no, Jenny, it doesn't have to be in any kind of official capacity. Their wet signature on that roster form is basically them taking their oath of affiliation with the Libertarian Party, and at that point, that's where you would want to make sure that you write in or stamp on their voter registration card.
Yeah. So another follow-up question Amanda Gibbs had was, do we suggest purchasing a stamp over writing it in?
I'm a fan of stamps. I think it's not. There's nothing in the Texas election code that says it has to be done either way. So if you have a stamp that says Libertarian, great. But if not, it's totally fine to just write in Libertarian as well. Either way, whether you stamp or write it in, that's going to fulfill the requirement.
Okay. Can you see the other one, Jessi, the other question? Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I got multiple screens going on here, guys. So can our CEC, aside from the chair, take care of things as needed to be turned in? Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. So whoever is making sure that all of those things get turned in, you know, if there is a vice chair or a secretary who is or something that's filling in that county chair capacity at your precinct conventions, just make sure that you get the paperwork from every precinct that participated. Make sure that everything's signed, that you got the precinct chair numbers on all of the paperwork. But yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be the county chair per se, Amanda, who actually sends those records into records at lptexas.org. And the oath of affiliation can be administered by any officer, by the way. It does not have to be the county chair who does that. Good questions, guys. All right. Let's jump into county convention then. All right. So precinct convention, depending on how big your county is, that might be pretty quick and easy. You might be in and out of there in a relatively short amount of time. County convention, though, plan to be there longer. There's more that happens at county convention than happens at precinct convention. You're going to have a pretty hefty agenda. You've got election of delegates to district conventions, election of delegates to state convention. You've got the election of your county executive committee for the next 2 years. There's a lot of stuff that goes into county convention. I would plan for at least 2 hours, and maybe even go longer if you live in a larger or particularly cantankerous county. But county convention is going to be one where you're definitely going to want to plan for more time, just because there's more involved in it. So let's talk about what that does involve. High level overview again. The date is March 12th, non-negotiable. That's mandated by TEC. So the county executive committee sets the location and times. Again, you do have to turn in notices for that by Wednesday, March 2nd. But I hope that most of you have already taken care of that at the same time you took care of precinct. That way it's done and over with. You don't have to worry about it anymore. And I do mention here again, that it will run longer than your precinct conventions because there's a lot of key actions that happen here. To ensure that credentialing of the state delegates, we are giving more time this time around than I think that we did last time around. So whole 10 business days to make sure that you get all of your completed forms for county convention submitted by March 22nd. So that's a whole 10 business days. So March 22nd is your deadline to make sure that all of those records get to lptexas.org. And then, of course, the presiding officer would have to certify any candidates to be placed on the ballot for general election by April 1st. And that's, of course, for any offices that are wholly contained within your county, not things that run into other counties. Those would be more like district convention. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Eligibility for county convention must have met all the requirements for the precinct convention. And then, of course, those precinct convention records should have been submitted to the county and state chairs, of course, submitting it to the records email address that fulfills that requirement for state chair. And then, of course, if they were elected as an additional delegate by someone in their voting precinct because they couldn't show up to precinct. But at that point, what we would need to make sure happens is since they didn't sign that roster at precinct convention, you would just need to make sure that they have an oath of affiliation administered and documented by a CEC officer, a current state CEC officer, a before rather than an after, right? Before they can participate in county convention. And we do have a standalone oath of affiliation that is provided in all of the convention forms as well, just in case you run into that. All right. County convention process and minutes. There is a lot. All right. First things first, we're calling it to order, right? We will do a roster of participants to establish and determine what your quorum is. And then you do need to make sure that you write down a roster. So there should be a roster documented that includes everybody's names and voter IDs. That way it can be easily matched to the delegate information in the precinct convention records. And then you go into the temporary officers of the convention. So again, temporary officers of the convention, it can be really anyone. It doesn't necessarily have to be your current state county chair or your current state county secretary. You guys just kind of discuss who is the temporary convention officers. It is typically appointed by the county chair, but if your county chair is not participating or does not plan to participate on a go forward basis, doesn't necessarily have to be them that does the appointing. So you got your temporary chairs of the convention, but then you do have to go through the process of nominations and elections for the permanent officers of the convention. We're not talking about CEC here. We're talking about officers of the convention. So who's going to be the convention chair? Who's going to be the convention secretary? You can also have a parliamentarian or some other things. We do recommend a convention secretary, just so the person who is running the convention doesn't have to be the same person who's taking notes. But you at minimum need to have a convention chair for the county. So there is going to be a process of, maybe nominating and electing those people. May need to go to a vote. Some people may have to stand up and give their stump speech as far as why they think they should be the convention chair. And then you go through the process of doing those convention officer elections. So we've talked about the call to order, the roster, the temporary, and then the nominations of the permanent convention chairs. And then you adopted an agenda. Guys, this box right here that's on the last screen and then the screen and the next one, this can basically be your agenda. So you're welcome to tweak the order in which you do any of these things however you like. But if you're talking about like, okay, how do I adopt an agenda? Like what should my agenda be? This box right here is a good guideline for that. So you adopt the agenda. So basically just kind of list the business items in the order that you're going to address them. And then agree on that agenda. And then you're going to do the nominations and elections of candidates for public office, assuming that you've elected it to do it in the order that I'm kind of giving here. So adopt the agenda and then nomination and elections of candidates for public office. I do want to call out again, whenever we're at county convention, we're talking about races that are wholly contained within the county. So if a race touches another county, those nominations don't happen at county convention. That would happen somewhere else. Same thing with like governor or lieutenant governor, attorney general, state level races. There's been some confusion about that in the past. You're not making those nominations at county. Those are state level races. If we're doing any kind of nomination at the county level, it is specifically for races that are wholly contained within the county. Now, just to say it, there may be some House districts or maybe probably not Senate districts, but House districts that are wholly contained within a county. And those would be fair game for nomination at a county convention. But generally speaking, if it's wholly contained within the county, absolutely. But if not, then that's probably going to be something that happens at a district convention or state convention. Real quickly, I do want to mention where you can find all of the candidates. And then that might be helpful for you. So there is a table. If you go under, again, on the LPTexas webpage, under 2022 conventions, there is going to be an item, 2022 candidates. And that is a table listing every single candidate that we are aware of who has submitted and filed an application to be for nomination. And it will tell you their name, what race they're running for, what county they preside in. And then one of the key columns on that table is impacted counties. And then also a key column in that table is going to be, I forget the column header, I'm so sorry, convention type. So it'll say whether they're nominated at a state or a district or a county. So if you haven't already got your arms wrapped around that, I encourage you to go out and look at that table sooner rather than later and see, are there any races on there that say impacted county, your county, and then convention type county? Those are the candidates that you would be considering for nomination at your county convention.
Yeah, what she's referring to there, the far right column on that. I'm looking at it right now. It's called the nominating convention type, but you may have to scroll all the way down to the bottom of the entire table so that you can get the scroll bar, so you can move the table over so that you can
Yeah.
see that. But it is definitely there. It's in the far right side, and it'll tell you if it's state, district, or county, and that'll help you kind of hone in on which ones you're needing to deal with at the county level.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to say it, you're going to want to know who those people are in advance. You may not know them. You may want to reach out to them and see what they're about, so you can determine whether you want to nominate them. You may find that this person is not a great person to represent the Libertarian Party, and you may want to know them at the county convention. So that's always a possibility. So we, as voting members of the Libertarian Party, do have a responsibility to reach out to candidates and see what they're about and make sure that they are going to be good stewards and representatives of our party and our ideologies. That makes sense. All right. So nominations and elections of public office. And then finally, we're getting into the nominations and elections of the CEC officers. So who is going to be, from 2022 to 2024, the county chair, the vice chair, secretary, treasurer, etc. So you will fill in your county executive committee positions as described in your county bylaws. And so they will serve for the next 2-year term. And then there is a CEC contact form that's also available to you under that form section that I've referenced, that'll need to be completed to list out all of the executive or elected executive officers. And then whenever you submit all your county forms, that will need to be included. So you will be doing nominations and elections of your CEC for the next 2-year term at your county convention. So at this point, you're probably beginning to see why I said allow about 2 hours at least for this county convention, because a lot's going down, right? All right. So CEC officers needs to happen. And then we get into the nominations and elections of delegates. So nominations and elections of district delegates, if applicable. Again, that table that I just referenced, LPTexas, 2022 conventions, 2022 candidates. You can look in that impacted counties to see where your county is listed. And if you have a convention type that's district, then you know that your county is going to be participating in a district convention and maybe even multiple district conventions. And so you'll want to make sure that you have nominations and elections for district delegates for each of those conventions. So for example, for me in Montgomery County, I've got 2 district conventions. I've got one for State Board of Education District 8, and then I've got another one for U.S. Congressional District 8. So whenever I do my county convention, we are going to be doing nominations and elections of district delegates for 2 separate district conventions. It may be the same people that are nominated and elected, and that's fine. But you do have to go through that exercise 2 times if you have 2 district conventions. And in most of you guys, the county chairs I know were contacted and by the affiliate team to let them know if there was a district convention that touches their county. And I know a lot of the county chairs have already worked together to determine, dates and times and everything. If you're not sure, or you feel like maybe your county's being left in the lurch in some way, shoot a note to credentials at lptexas.org, and we'll try to get you pointed in the right direction and make sure that you get tagged in with the other counties so that you guys can coordinate.
Jessi, if you want, we've got the screen pulled up for the 2022 candidates ready to share here.
Oh, wonderful! Thank you.
So you guys can see the Libertarian Party of Texas website, and when you come over here to the conventions tab, and scroll down and hit candidates here, that's the screen that we're on. And so you see this large table here. Some columns are off view to the right, so you're going to want to go all the way down to the bottom, grab your little scroller over here, and move over to get to those. So you can see it's fairly wide. So just make sure you don't miss that, because that's some pretty important information over there in honing in on the different ones. So you can peruse through there, find out. Let me scroll back down, and then, well, I can get into it by clicking on it and then scrolling up. So you can see the county of residence, and then I've got to come back down here. Sorry, guys.
And that applies to the candidate, right? So
yes,
yeah.
of the specific candidate that was listed in the far left column. So here you've heard her mention the counties impacted. Gray lets you know that they're not affiliated with Texas, so it lists them here. And then over here is the nominating convention type. So you can see, like in this case, Harris, Montgomery, and Polk counties are affiliated with LPTexas and are affected by this particular candidate's race, whereas San Jacinto and Walker are not affiliated with LPTexas but are also included. So you can see that for each candidate listed, and go down there and find which counties are affected, so that you know which ones to be on the lookout for your particular county convention. And as you can see, some of them get fairly complicated with the number of counties they touch. So just make sure you're aware of all of the possible candidates that you might have to deal with nominating for your particular county.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe.
Yep.
All right. So that's where you find all of your candidates. And then so district delegates, you can reference that same spreadsheet to just make sure that you're aware of all of the district conventions that would be applicable for your county, and then make those nominations. And then finally, we are getting into the nominations elections for delegates to the state convention. So state delegates, that does have a certain number tied to it. So we do have a spreadsheet, and Joe, I might actually have you pull this up as well and share this too, because it seems like I'm not able to share multiple screens here.
Oh, that's okay.
But if you go under 2022 conventions, and then under training and forms, under the training, there is going to be a spreadsheet for the apportionment of state delegates. And that is going to tell you how many delegates your county has to send to state.
Okay, so you're direct me, and I'll lead them through it. If you, Nathan, if you want to share my screen real quick. I'm at the main website.
Awesome.
Okay, and we're going under conventions.
Yeah, then training and forms.
Under conventions, then training and forms.
Yes, sir.
Here we are.
And then scroll down just a little bit, and then under training and materials, view right there, 2022 state delegate apportionment. Yes, sir.
All right, so you guys seeing that? And we're clicking through, and here we go.
Yeah. So if we kind of scroll over to the right here, we'll see total delegates. And so basically that column N, where you see total delegates, basically you're going to marry up that column to the row where your county is.
Let me see if I can scroll down here.
Yeah, why don't you pull up Llano County, Joe?
Yeah, let me rearrange the spreadsheet a bit.
Sure.
Don't have a lot of room. I'm not sure if that's because of the way we're screen sharing, but I can get down to it. You can see the bottom.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, you can pull up any county you want. But yeah, each each of the counties will be listed, and if it is an affiliated county with LP Texas, then it will give you the apportionment of the total number of delegates. The minimum number is 3, so each county does get a minimum of 3 delegates to the state convention. But
Yeah.
there are
See,
going to be some counties that have more.
yeah, I've got Lano pulled up. I didn't really
Mhm.
need to know that, but for
Yeah, I know.
for this purposes, we meet the minimum. Wish it was more, but yeah, so that you can see the numbers across and how they arrive at those totals.
Yeah. Usually about this time, someone may ask, how is all of that determined? Um, that is too complex to go into in this session. Suffice to say, how is that determined? Stop. Um, Suffice to say that there is an algorithm that is used on that. The select votes for a multiplier, and then there is a formula that determines how each of those counties get the certain number of delegates. Also, if there are counties that ran uh, folks at the county level and got at least, like I think it was, X% of the vote, I think it was 20% of the vote or more, they could potentially get more delegates based on their good showing
Yeah, I believe.
in the prior section. So like I said, it's there's a lot that goes into it, and I don't want to muddy the waters on this particular call. But if anyone is kind of interested in the intricacies of how the state delegates numbers are determined, again, just send us an email to credentials@lptexas.org, and we'll be happy to talk with you about that and break that down for you. It's just a little bit too complex to go into on this particular call.
Agreed.
Yeah. All right. Know how many delegates that your county can send to state before you go into your county convention, so you know how many spots you have to fill. All right. Whoops. All right. So talked about delegates for state convention, adoption or modification to county bylaws. This is something that I am highly, highly encouraging all counties to do. So I've got to give props to 2 really hardworking members of LP Texas here, Mr. Nathan Watts and also Arthur Thomas, who have done a lot of work on revising our base county bylaws template to add in some key things based on situations that have come up over the past few years. So what I am recommending is each county, you probably have a county bylaws, right, already. So you whenever you affiliated, you would have had county bylaws. You may have over the years modified those. What I'm recommending is that everybody take this new county bylaws template that Nathan and Arthur have put together, bump that up against your existing county bylaws, and then identify where there are changes, where there are deltas, and then discuss those and just work through that at your county convention process and formally adopt new bylaws. If you want to take the new bylaws template that Nathan and Arthur have and just adopt that as your county bylaws template, that's fine too, as long as everybody views and agrees on it. But if you do have some kind of county nuances, like I know in Montgomery County, like we've added some things to our county bylaws over the year that are specific to Montgomery County, like things that we've talked about at the county level. So what I'm going to do is, just like I said, I'm going to take that bylaws template that Nathan and Arthur have worked so hard on. I'm going to compare that to my existing Montgomery County bylaws, and I'm going to just kind of compare and say, here's a difference, here's a difference, and that way I am prepared going into my county convention to say, hey, here are the differences between what's being proposed versus what we have in our county bylaws. Let's talk about it, and then let's elect adopt or modify our county bylaws to take that into account. So I think the message here is pretty pleased with the cherry on top. Go out, and that's under the forms as well, and look at that county bylaws template and do your best to try to incorporate as many of those changes into your county bylaws as possible. I know one of the changes, for example, is how to go about filling select vacancies. Should someone on the select be removed or resign at some point, there's a process where, counties that fall within that Senate district would need to, maybe nominate someone to be the new select representative. So that's an example of something that's been added to that new template that we've run into because we didn't have a process for it. So,
And that's a fairly important one to note here because that bylaw was changed at the last convention. So we
mhm,
changed the entire process about how, when a select vacancy occurs, how it is filled. And the kind of the problem, I wouldn't really call it a problem. The nuance to that bylaw is that the counties themselves have that power. It's sort of decentralized. But if a county doesn't have a particular bylaw set for that, then they might not have a voice in that. So it's important that the counties note that bylaw change and adjust their own bylaws accordingly.
gotcha. And again, that new county bylaws template is going to be included in the same place where all of the forms are. So if you go under that 2022 conventions and then training and forms, in that forms area, the convention forms, like the same place where you find your precinct notices, your county convention notices, all of those forms, that new county bylaw template is included in that same folder. All right. So adoption and modifications to county bylaws. And then finally, any other business. So, and this is kind of a if applicable type thing, right? So if you wanted to, pass some kind of resolution, which is basically just kind of a non-binding statement that's been brought up, or any other motions that are brought up by convention participants, just wrapping up any other business that may come up. And then, of course, the convention ends once a motion to adjourn is passed. So county convention steps, there's a lot. Plan accordingly as far as time. Make sure that you have, multiple copies of forms and everything, and you've got all of that printed out and ready to go. And then you can, again, use this county convention steps as the agenda. And then you can work through your delegates at your county convention to adopt that agenda and potentially move things around in a order if you think that makes better sense. So I'm going to pause again now that we're at the end of the county convention section. And before we talk about district convention, I want to go again to you, Joe, to just ask, what questions do we have out there?
We've got a couple here. I've fallen a little bit behind. It looks like we've got a question where, oh, it's on the screen right now. Did I miss where to find the new bylaws template? And
Yeah. So Joe, go to 2022 conventions, go to training and forms.
here we go. So you got the main website, lptexas.org. You've got 2022
Mhm.
convention. I hope that's sharing on the screen. And then you scroll
It
down
is.
to training and forms here.
And then scroll down to convention forms.
And here we go. It's going to
And
be
then
in this
click
button
on the
here.
files. Yeah,
Ignite is a
you got
repository
it.
where we keep all of the forms, and you shouldn't need a password to get into this particular area.
Yeah, no, that's publicly shared. And then there is, I think you scroll down a little further. I think it's kind of in chronological order, if you will, but there should be there we
Here we
go,
go.
county bylaws template.
Right here, 12.0 and 12.1, and then the
That's a,
example is 12.2 here.
yes, you got it. So one that's fillable and then one that's just an example for guidance.
Yep.
Other questions about county convention?
I see another one here. Judith is asking, is it anywhere else easy to find or just in the packet you referenced from a previous convention training? I'm not sure. Judith, could you clarify a little bit about what I must have missed the timing, so I understood the context.
I'm not sure. We can get with the affiliate team to see about that. But this is just kind of the easiest place to find it at present. But I'm sure that if you were to email the affiliate team, they could provide that to you at your convenience. But it's posted out there so that you don't even have to contact them.
Yeah, we wanted to make sure everything was kind of in one simple central location to make sure that anything you might possibly need for convention should be there.
Yeah. Thanks, Doug. All right. Awesome. Okay. Well, if there's no more questions about county, we are going to jump right into district convention. All right. District convention is Saturday, March 19th. So these are for those races that are not statewide, like governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, whatnot, but they're also not wholly contained within a single county, right? So I gave the example of the ones that impact me at Montgomery County, right? So I've got U.S. Congressional District 8. So that is Montgomery County, that's Harris County, and that's Polk County. So that is an example of a district convention for me. And again, Joe showed earlier in the presentation that spreadsheet that shows all the candidates, where it'll show the convention type and which counties that are impacted. If you are unsure whether your county is impacted by a district convention, you can go out to that spreadsheet. And if you have not heard from anyone, nobody has reached out to you to let you know, or you've not heard from any of your fellow county chairs in those other counties to try to coordinate the district convention, then I would say you probably want to start reaching out to them so that you can plan those things. So the district executive committee, which is generally speaking the county chairs of the existing county chairs of the county parties, will select those locations and times. And again, county chairs were notified, but if you believe that you should have received a notice and you haven't, you can contact secretary at lptexas.org, or you can reach out to the credentials committee too, just to say it. But basically what the district executive committee does is they will just vote on a time and location for the district convention. You may have multiple district conventions that your county touches, and it's going to be hard. And I'm going to use Mr. Robert Applebaum of Polk County as my example. Bless his heart. He's got to be in Lufkin at 3 p.m. on March 19th for a Senate District 3 convention. And then he is having to drive all the way from Lufkin to Spring to participate a couple hours later in 2 other district conventions for CD8 and SBOE8. OE8. So all that to say is be kind, and be considerate, and in our state bylaws, it does say that care should be given to overlapping districts and times. Try to be accommodating. We want to make sure that if somebody does want to participate in a district convention, that they can. So if somebody's already committed to, be somewhere at 3 o'clock and they're going to need 2 hours drive time to get to the next convention, then let's make sure that we work together and we are trying to be as accommodating as possible. All that to say is that there's not a requirement that says that you have to attend every single district convention that touches your county. So you may want to be picksy choosy, right? You may not necessarily be interested in the nomination for state board of education. You would rather use your time and gas money to participate in, a U.S. congressional district election, or, a House district election or something. I'm being rhetorical here, but I think you get what I'm saying, is that you may have to choose which district conventions you participate in, just because there are so many happening and they're all happening on the same day throughout the state. You may decide that you want to pick a district convention because there is a particular candidate that you just do not think is going to be a good representative of LP Texas, and you want to show up at that district convention just so you can no to that person. You're like, nope, absolutely not. Or vote against them. So that's something to consider whenever you're picking which district convention to go to. So again, you've got that spreadsheet to reference, and then you can reach out to the other county chairs to plan accordingly. you do have paperwork that has to be turned in from the district convention, and that's going to be done by whoever you guys end up electing as your convention chair. So there is a district convention minutes that has to be submitted to records. You need to have a list of all of the participants, including their names of address, and then also the names and addresses of all of the elected nominees to public office, not elected. And then all of those forms must be submitted to records by March 29th. And then, of course, any candidates that you do formally nominate at your district convention, those do need to be certified by April 8th so that they appear on the ballot. And that should be done by whoever is elected as the district convention chair. So that's the overview. Eligibility for district conventions is really loosey-goosey. The Texas election code is so specific on precinct and county conventions, and then it just kind of goes dark a little bit about district conventions. So there's not a whole lot of guidance in the Texas election code around district conventions. But basically, what the main requirement is that they must be a duly elected district delegate from the county convention. So if they were elected to be a district delegate at their county convention for that particular district convention, then they're eligible. That's it. That's it. Now, obviously, they would have had to have fulfilled the eligibility requirements at the prior, the conventions, precinct and county. But that's the main eligibility requirement for a district convention, is that you were nominated and elected at your county convention. Process and minutes. Basically, you just have a call to order by any member of the district executive committee. And of course, that is the county chairs of the impacted counties. You do need to get a roster of participants so you can establish quorum. That roster, again, needs to include everybody's names and their voter ID numbers. That way we can bump that up against precinct and county records, make sure that everything is in accordance. You got the temporary officers of the convention that are introduced. And that's just, kind of somebody raising their hand said, yeah, I'll be the temporary convention chair. But then you go through the process to nominate and elect your permanent officers of the convention. And so then you'll have a convention chair, hopefully a convention secretary as well, to take some notes. And then you actually do your nominations and elections for candidates of public office. So again, each district convention deals with one public office. So if you're having, two different district conventions at the same time and place, maybe not the same time, maybe you do one and then the other, right? You'll just need to make sure that you fill out paperwork for both, right? So it's not just one district convention, even though maybe it's happening at the same, time and location. You're going to have to do a district convention for the first person who's being nominated and for the second one as well. So you may potentially go through this process twice, depending on how you and your fellow DEC people hash it out. I'll use myself as an example again. So I've got a district convention that is happening on March 19th. It's actually two district conventions. We're going to do SBOE 8, and then we're going to do CD 8. Same time and location, we'll just do them one after the other. And then there will be separate paperwork and potentially, separate, convention chairs for each of those district conventions. So district convention should be a shorter one as well. Again, county is going to be your longer one to plan for. I'm going to pause again at the end of the district convention section to some of the resources for questions about district convention. What do we got out there?
Yeah, we've definitely got some good questions and a couple that have
Awesome.
stumped me. So Jenny Moore, I'm going back to the beginning here. Well, let's take the one on the screen. Amanda is asking, as far as district delegates go, is there a specific number, and is that on the spreadsheet too?
No specific number. There's no minimum, no maximum. Is as long as that person was nominated at county convention to be a delegate at the district convention, then they're eligible. But there is no minimum or maximums on that. Good question.
Okay, let's go ahead and take the next one on the screen. Jenny Moore here is saying, not sure if the question belongs here, but at state convention, when we gather to vote for select reps, are only delegates allowed to vote? Delegates and alternates. Anyone from that district? What are the requirements to vote at the convention for select membership?
Yeah, that one is state. That one is state. And honestly, I'm going to stick a pin in that one, Jenny, because we are actually going to be doing another round of training sessions specifically for state delegates next month, and we will make sure that we address that question in that training. But yeah, that you're absolutely on point, Jenny. That would be something that happens at the state convention.
Another question that Jenny had earlier, she asked if the
Mhm.
same number of alternates and delegates are allowed to attend the state convention. In other words, what is the number of alternates from a county convention going to state?
Same. So if you've got three, delegates, you can have 3 alternates. So if you've got 10 delegates, you can have 10 alternates. Yep, same
Okay.
number.
And then Amanda Gibbs asked, are there or should there be certain prerequisites for those picked as state delegates at the county convention?
I don't know. So it's kind of subjective, right, Amanda? Like you I would encourage if somebody wants to be a delegate, to have them stand up and explain why.
Yeah.
Maybe ask probing questions like, what, who is your, favorite libertarian author? What kind of libertarian do you want to be? What do you like about our platform? What would you like to see change about our platform? Ask some probing questions, and then
Tell me
that
why
way
you want to be a delegate to state.
yeah, yeah,
What's your purpose? What
yeah.
do you see as your purpose?
Right, yeah. Why do you think that you're going to represent Harris County well? So yeah, it's not, there's not any particular requirements per se, other than obviously they had to have done the oath of affiliation at Precinct, and you know come to the county convention and things like that. There may be things in your county bylaws that are a little bit more prescriptive. I know for Montgomery County, we recently passed a bylaws change around eligibility to be a state delegate. But that's a county specific thing. So I would say, and this isn't trying to, you know, punt the question or anything, Amanda, but take a look at your county bylaws and make sure that there's nothing in there specific about that in the Harris County bylaws. But other than that, like,
It's up to you.
as you're going through the nomination and election process for the delegates, like, put people to the question, like, be tough.
I mean, they're representing you. I mean, they're voting on
Exactly.
your behalf on bylaws, on platform,
Right.
on the candidates that represent us at the state level. So
Hmm.
make sure that you choose people that you feel are going to be a good representation of you and your county.
Right. Right.
Um, Amanda also brings up another question. So hypothetically, Harris has 36 delegates to state, and they can send 36 times 2.
Yeah.
Yes, as alternates. Bruce brings up a valid point. Remember to number your alternates, because you want to seat them in
Yeah.
the order of importance,
Good
if at all
point, Bruce.
possible. It's not like they're
Right.
going to all be sat at once. You may have 35 of the 36 turn up, so you've only got one spot you need to fill. And how are you going to do that if all 36 are on an equal playing field? So it's best to go ahead and number those, prioritize those at that county level.
Yeah. Good questions. All right.
I think
Don't think we
that's
see
all
any
the
more out
questions for
there.
now. If there are any more, I missed them. So hopefully not.
All right. All right, guys, we're in the home stretch. Thank you for hanging out with us this long. What we wanted to do was just, again, kind of talk about where we can find the resources. So we've, Joe's brought it up on his screen a couple of times. We've got the LP Texas website, lptexas.org, and under that page, there is the 2022 conventions header. all things convention is under this header. So there's the training and form section that we've referenced multiple times during this training session. There is also the 2022 candidates that's under that. The state apportionment delegate is in there. But then, kind of on a non credentialing level, there is a lot of information about the convention itself, our state convention. So that will link you out to our state convention website where you can see the agenda, you can purchase your tickets, you can try to find your hotel accommodations and all of that stuff. So if you're kind of itching to get ahead for state, even if you're not even sure if you're going to be a delegate or not, if you just want to go to state, even as an observer, that's all fine and well, and you can find all of the details about the convention on that website. All right. And then the last thing that I wanted to leave you with was just a quick blurb about Robert's Rules. So particularly for new county affiliates, I feel like this is a source of intimidation. And that's kind of the first thing I say on the slide is, please don't be intimidated by this. Nobody expects you to go out and buy the latest edition of Robert's Rules and read it cover to cover. Robert's Rules, you just need to, know the basics, right? We do have a link in the trainings session that has a user-friendly table, but we do just have some basic definitions here. What is a motion? What does it mean to second a motion? What does it mean whenever you make an amendment to the emotion? What do we talk about? What do we mean whenever we're talking about a presiding officer or a county chair? Again, no, you don't need to be an expert in Robert's Rules to successfully hold a convention. So just kind of know the basics, and then you're going to be fine. I promise. You don't have to be an expert in Robert's Rules, but we wanted to at least provide some high level guidance on this, just so you have a general idea of Robert's Rules and what they mean for parliamentary procedure. All right, and that is it, guys. You've listened to me ramble for an hour and 12 minutes at this point. So I'm opening it up for questions of any sort. We can go all the way back to precinct. We can talk county, district, what have you.
Amanda's asked another wonderful question here. Do delegates have to purchase tickets?
Delegates do need, well, it depends on if you want to participate in the events. Right?
Correct.
Why didn't y'all tell me my hair was all wonky? Yeah. So if you want to participate in the events, so whenever you purchase your ticket, you get I believe the gubernatorial, thanks, Nathan. The gubernatorial session, I think, which is on that Friday night for free. But then there's a couple of different things that are happening kind of throughout the weekend, some lunches, the gala.
All of the extras.
Spike's going to be there. Yeah. So that's it.
Are what you're purchasing the ticket for. Your main to vote in the convention as a delegate, to vote on the nominees, to vote on the bylaws, to participate in all basic business functions of the convention. That is free.
Right.
But we encourage folks to go further.
Yeah, what is it? There ain't no such thing as a free lunch, right?
Right.
So I mean, obviously, the gas to get to Irving, Texas, and then you'll probably need to have a hotel and everything. But you don't have to have a ticket in order to be a delegate. You just wouldn't be able to participate in some of those ancillary events that are happening. Good question.
And I don't see any more questions at this point. Wait. Here we go. Amanda's got another one.
Oh, gala stuff. Is it fancy clothes? Man, we're libertarians. I guarantee you, Chris Clements is going to be in a kilt.
Yeah, the gala is typically.
Hey, Moxley, come on screen. Do you know the answer to this question? Do we need to be fancy at the gala? Oh, Jenny would like us to plug that we highly recommend making sure that you are a current donor of LPTexas. apparently. And I think for those who are lifetime members, Ginny's really going to be happy to hear me say this. If you are a lifetime member of LP Texas, I am told that there will be special events and privileges for you. So if anybody wants to make that one-time donation of 1836 to LP Texas to be a lifetime member, there might be some very special what's the word I'm
Circumstances.
looking for? Swanky things happening for you if you are
So yeah,
willing to make that
the
investment.
gala itself is fancy. I would call it libertarian fancy though, so take that with a grain of salt. So for what it's worth.
Right. Yeah, for
Doug
sure.
says,
For
I don't
sure.
dress
I
up.
mean,
Jenny is fancy. I will probably like put on pants for this event, you know.
me too.
I won't wear my yoga pants to the gala.
To the
No.
to the gala. To the gala. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean it's fancy and fun. We want everybody to have fun, but we also want to give people an opportunity to dress up and make a go of
Yeah.
it. I mean, it's one of those once every 2 year events, so it's nice to put on your best and have a little
Yeah.
fun. So
Good deal. All right. All right, gang. Any other questions?
haven't seen any.
Oh, I'm going to take this time to mention the vendor tables for LP Texas Convention. Yeah. So we are going to be in Irving at the Westin, and the actual convention itself will take place in a big old ballroom. And outside the ballroom in the corridor, there are going to be tables for exhibitors. So we have put out a call to exhibitors to set up their booths for LP Texas. And there's different sponsorship levels and things like that. So that is something as well that you will be able to participate in. And going back to Amanda's question, is for free too. So obviously, if you're a delegate, you'll be able to cruise around that hall and stop in at all of the various vendor tables as well. Awesome. How do we get libertarian values back into the mainstream? You know what? We'll definitely be voting on platform and considering platform at the state convention. So Brent, I would say definitely make sure that you show up at your precinct convention, county convention, make a play to try to be a delegate at state convention. That way you can be seated there on the floor and have a say representing your county on our state bylaws, on our state platform, and make sure that you you know, LP Texas is representing
And
us in the way that we want to be represented.
yeah, and before we even get that far, fundamentally is get people out to your precinct and county conventions.
Yes.
Invite non-libertarians to come take a look at what we do and watch the discussion and meet them where they are.
Yeah.
If we want to get those values back to the mainstream, we've got to engage people who aren't libertarians and step outside of our echo chambers. So I think that's very important, to be open and willing to engage those who don't necessarily agree right now with our philosophy, in the hopes that we can win them over.
Yeah. And Jenny will appreciate this answer as well, is all of that takes money. So actually being able to buy ad space, be it billboards or commercials, all of that takes money. I don't think it's any secret that we don't have as deep a coffers as the Republican and Democratic parties. They are a very well funded machine. So as far as getting our libertarian ideas in the mainstream, one of the best ways you can help do that is being a monthly donor to the Libertarian Party of Texas. So if you go out to the lptexas.org website, there is going to be an area where you can make donations. There's different levels of donations. You can, do like $5 a month, $10 a month, or $25 a month, whatever you think, is reasonable for your budget. But one of the best ways to do that is to make donations so that we have the funds to execute on all the great things that we want to do to help get that message out there. And that's lptexas.org/donate. All right, guys. Well, I will give you guys 10 minutes back to your Saturday evening. We were scheduled to run till 8:30, but I think we've ended a little bit early. So let everyone get back to your families. I want to thank you for joining and getting, giving us such great questions, just being such an engaging group today. And thank you, Joe, for being my bestest co-pilot. And thanks, Moxley, for helping produce this, our man behind the curtain. And if you have any questions, again, credentials@lptexas.org, and we'll get back to you just as soon as possible.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good evening, everyone.